All right, welcome to today's episode of Piano TV. I am in my studio where I do teaching and stuff, and I've got a fun little cute keyboard that I want to talk to you about today. I went traveling for a month and I had to take a plane. I didn't have any way to carry expensive luggage. I wanted to travel really light. So I've got a really teeny tiny cute little travel keyboard that I wanted to talk to you about today, and I'll share what my criteria was when I was selecting a keyboard and the things that this can do, what I like about it, and it'll basically just be a nice little review. So let's get started. So I want to start this video by discussing what my criteria was when I was deciding on buying a keyboard. The most important for me, actually there was a couple things that were pretty equally important. One was cost. I didn't want to spend a ton of money for something that I really wasn't going to use a whole lot. This keyboard for me was purely a function of being able to do my job, being able to teach piano, and being able to have some type of keyboard situation while I was traveling, but I didn't want to invest in like a really nice setup. At the same time, I didn't want to just go on Amazon and buy whatever no-name brand keyboard that they happen to have. I was looking at a lot of different options, and really what it came down for me is I wanted to stick with a trusted brand. I've got a Yamaha here, so I'll talk more about that in detail, but that was one of my criteria. Now, what made this really complicated is that I wanted touch sensitivity. So this is another really important thing that I was looking for in my travel keyboard. Most tiny little travel keyboards don't have any touch sensitivity at all. What that means is when you press a note, it makes exactly the same volume no matter how light or hard you press it. Now, since I'm a piano player first and I'm not really a synth person, touch sensitivity matters a whole ton to me, and it was the one thing that I definitely couldn't sacrifice. It was more important than size. Finally, since this was coming in my luggage, it needed to be something that was small enough to fit in luggage, and not just small, but also light. I wanted something lightweight that I could really just, honestly, you could throw it in a backpack. It's that small. So it took me a lot of searching, but I did find something that meets all the criteria that I'm mentioning here. So what I ended up with was the Yamaha PSS-A50. Now, as of this recording in mid-2024, the price in Canadian dollars is $150. I've seen it from $150 to $200. It's very affordable. So that was a huge, significant selling point for me. It was also available via Long & McQuaid, which is a Yamaha retailer. I was able to easily purchase it in Canada, and again, I didn't have to rely on an Amazon purchase. I could stick with trusted retailers and trusted brands, which again, like I said, was a really important thing for me. One of the things that made me pick up this one, aside from the price, it's kind of hard to go wrong with a price like that, is that it has touch sensitivity. So one really cool thing about this keyboard is you can manipulate its touch sensitivity. So the cool thing about the touch sensitivity with this one is you can actually manipulate how sensitive you want it to be. You could keep it with just, you could turn it completely off. So a keyboard with no touch sensitivities, doesn't matter if I really jam on that note aggressively or if I lightly touch it, it's going to be the exact same sound. But what I can do with the touch sensitivity here, just by manipulating, I can do very light. Notice that I can make it more or less sensitive. There's a little bit of a range. I like putting it on the lightest setting. So what that's going to do is it's going to mainly default to soft unless I really get in there and dig into the keys, so we don't get any harsh sound. So I really have to work at it to get the right sound. So I like having these levels of touch sensitivity. This is a really big selling point for me. Another thing is if we're looking at the specs of this particular device, it's really small. So if we're taking a look at the specs of it, it's roughly about 20 inches across. It's pretty short, so the height is about 2 inches tall at its thickest. And then the depth in terms of how long it is this way, it's going to be about 8 inches. So this very easily fits into actually a fairly small suitcase. This is small enough that it could actually fit into a backpack too. And again, importantly, I was looking for a low weight setting. So this is this whole keyboard's about 3 pounds, about 3 pounds with batteries. Now there's two ways to hook it up. Another thing that I'll just mention this quickly, but another thing I was looking for was something with an external speaker. There's also a lot of portable MIDI keyboards that don't have an external speaker. There's pros and cons of that, but ultimately I wanted something really easy, something that I didn't need another device to give me the sound for. I wanted it to just produce sound all on its own without needing to be hooked up through a MIDI device. Now, this is MIDI compatible. I haven't used it for that purpose, so that's not something that I'm going to comment on. But when we're talking about how to plug it up and how to plug it in and use it, it's just got a very simple USB port. So all you do is plug it into the back of your keyboard, and then the USB goes in the back of the laptop or computer or whatever you're using. In addition, though, it also has, I'll just flip it over and show, it's got this battery capability. So the nice thing about the batteries, again, I haven't used this, but it uses AA, and I'm really a big fan of regular standard size batteries. Very, very easy to power this on batteries. Not sure about the battery lifespan. It's a pretty small keyboard, so I assume you'd get pretty far with it. I keep turning it on and off as I'm moving it around the there we go. But battery power, I think, would be something to explore if you wanted to take it with you to, I don't know, where do people take keyboards? To the park? Who knows? This keyboard has got 37 keys, so it's very, very small. And not only does it only have 37 keys, which is about 3 octaves, the thing that's interesting about that is it has 32 the 32 key polyphony. And what that means is you can press up to 30 keys at the same time, 32, and they're all going to make a sound. And I can't, yeah, there's a couple that have run out of, there's a couple that aren't making a sound in here. But basically, you're never going to need to press that many notes at the same time. I've played with electronic keyboards before that max out at maybe 3 notes. So if you try to do anything more than, like, say, a standard chord and add some melody notes on top of it, it can't allow for that. So having a higher polyphony is really important to me. Now, there's this is something that I don't use very much, but it's kind of fun to play with, and Yamaha's got some cool videos that you can check out if this is up your alley. But you've got a variety of voices. It's just a typical keyboard, so I could get into my synth pad. That sounds a little bit like Christmas. It's cool. I'm gonna, we can, you know. We've got some really fun electronic sounds that we can play around with. We've got roughly, I think it's something like 40 voices and a couple drum kits. So that's giving me options of sounds that I can play with. And then there's ways that I can manipulate the sounds that are defaulting in as well. For example, I can add an arpeggiated function. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn arpeggio on. And now when I press the synth lead, you notice how I'm just holding it out. It's giving me this really kind of cool beat. I can actually change the beat if I want it to be a little bit different. There's a significant handful of arpeggiated settings. You can also, maybe I don't like that tempo. You know, it's pretty cool, but maybe I want it faster. Bum, 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 bum. I can just hit the tap tempo. It's at 158. Whoa, that's way too fast. So now I'm like, okay, what about ba, ba, da, da. Hit it a few times. That's 70 beats per minute. That's very cool. This reminds me of you spin me right round, baby, right round. So let's see what so anyway, you can play around with the arpeggiated functions. I think they're really cool. Maybe you hit on something that you really like. I've got this cool G minor chord thing. Hit the arpeggiated hold button, and now it's just going to hold that chord for me. So that's kind of fun. I could go to a piano. And I could play over top of it, do things like that. So there's a lot of neat functionality in here. You can record a phrase, you can loop a phrase, you can only do one phrase. This isn't really meant, I don't think, for, you know, high activity performance stuff. Like if you're doing, you got an Ed Sheeran thing going on. But it does have these little fun add-ins that I personally don't use very much. When I was getting a keyboard, I was really just using it for teaching. I just wanted to be able to make piano sounds. I don't need that arpeggiated action. Now, this doesn't have pedal functionality. This is the one thing that I feel I'm really missing. But again, it's $150, so I can't really complain about that. The damper pedal, we have a sustain function. I could add it. But it's just going to blanket hold the keys, and when I change, it's just going to all kind of blur everything together, sometimes unpleasantly. I don't have any control over the sustain, which is, yeah, one thing to keep in mind. There is a sustain button, but that's not going to give you the same control that those of us who are classically trained with our feet, we don't get that kind of action. But I mean, you win some, you lose some. This is mostly a win across the board. So all in all, I think it's a pretty solid little keyboard, especially for the price, for the reliability of the brand and all these other things. It served my purposes. The one thing I would say, it's not a great practice piano. And I think I need to be clear that there's a important distinction to be made between the kind of piano that you can test out some chords on, noodle around with, maybe do a bit of composing with when you're traveling, versus the kind of keyboard that's actually going to allow you to get better at your pieces that you're practicing. If you're a classically trained kind of piano student, I wouldn't recommend using this for regular practice. I mean, maybe a couple tries, but I mean, you're going to be limited in so many ways. So, for example, if you're a grade 3 student and you're trying to do basically any of your repertoire, you're not going to be able to. It's got a tiny range. Not only are the keys really tiny, but the range is tiny. It's only got 3 octaves. So, virtually any piece you're going to pull out, you're going to be super limited. Again, it's not great for practice, but if you want something on the road with you that you can, figure out some chords with, maybe work on your music theory, work on your ear training, or even just sight reading, just practicing note recognition, that kind of thing, I think you could be pretty well served. It worked okay for teaching, not the best. I mean, it's nowhere near having an actual real keyboard. It's doesn't have that kind of functionality. But again, I've got my my other Yamaha behind me, kind of the entry level 125. And this, if I had it as if I had it as checked luggage in a nice hard case, it would be fine to travel with. But again, then it's just the hassle of having a giant keyboard when you have to go on a plane. If I was doing a road trip, it would be totally different. Road trip, I could probably just shove my big keyboard in the back of my car, and that would be fine. So I mean, it just depends on what kind of work you need to do on the keyboard when you're traveling. I would recommend this across the board, though. I think it's pretty good, again, especially for the price. I don't know that you're going to get anything better than this for the price, especially with the specific criteria of touch sensitivity. Very difficult to find that. Things that would improve this for me, and things that I would probably get if I was willing to pay a couple $100 more, would be a keyboard that was capable of doing a damper pedal. So that would make me feel a little less crippled on it and have a little bit more room to explore it. Also, a couple more octaves. But again, if I'm adding a couple octaves even with MIDI keys, it might slightly improve my practice experience. But since the keys are small, you practice it on this, and then you go back to your regular piano, and you kind of have to relearn it in a way, because all of the notes are wider. So all of the hand distance gaps that you're used to spanning aren't going to cross over nicely. So again, I don't recommend these kinds of small keyboards for travel if you need to do a lot of hardcore practicing. I know different musicians have different takes on this kind of thing, but this is my own perspective as a mostly like classically kind of focused person who likes also playing piano for rock bands and stuff. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you and share my experiences using it. Let me know if you've got a favorite travel keyboard. I'd love to hear about yours. All right, thanks for watching today's video. Catch you in the next one.